While Paul Romness played a hand in quite a few therapeutic wins over the course of his 25 years in Big Bio, and while he exited Big Bio 10 years ago to scratch an entrepreneurial itch, it's unlikely to have crossed his mind at the time that 10 years later, he'd be scratching that itch via leadership of a clinical stage biotech developing vaccines and antibody drug conjugates for cancer patients. It's unlikely because Paul is a Big Bio government affairs and public policy guy. And when he left Big Pharma to run his own business, that business was a consultancy that fit squarely in the wheelhouse of his expertise. But just a couple of years into that endeavor, life threw a curveball that inspired the launch of OS Therapies, the biotech Paul now leads as chairman and CEO. I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech. And on today's show, we're getting to know Paul Romness, sharing the inspirational story of OS Therapies launch and learning how that inspiration has fueled the small but mighty company's ongoing success. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Matt. What a thoughtful intro.
Well, I appreciate that. The thoughts were all correct. I got that right.
Yeah.
All right. Good deal. Yeah.
Definitely wasn't looking for osteosarcoma.
I didn't think so. Although, we're going to get into the story, and it's kind of a neat story given your long history with osteosarcoma, prior to dedicating effectively your entire professional life to it. And we'll get into those details here in just a bit. But I want to let you know that I'm super excited to have you on the show. Paul and I had the chance to talk a few weeks ago, and after hearing about the work that he's doing and why, it was a no-brainer. I had to get Paul on the show. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So you get your start years back. We're going to rewind the clock way back. You get your start in life sciences as a salesman, as a lot of execs often do, right? You started selling orthopedic devices for J&J. That kind of served as your springboard into a career in government relations and policy leadership. That career spanned companies like J&J, Amgen, Boehringer Ingelheim, and we'll revisit those years as we talk, because I want to see, I want to learn how they kind of informed your career. But I don't want to start there. I want to start with the personal and professional inflection point that came much later in around 2017 in the form of a young woman named Olivia Eggy. So rather than fill in the blanks, I'm going to ask you to start there. Tell us her story and tell us how it inspired yours.
I feel like that movie with Cuba Gooding Jr. Not going to make me cry, man.
I don't know. We'll see. I might try.
It's a very impressive story. Olivia was diagnosed with osteosarcoma in February of 2017. She lives about 2 doors from us. She's my daughter's best friend. Mm-hmm. And I like to tell the end of the story and take away a little suspense because Olivia's doing great. Even though she was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, very deadly bone cancer, she is 7 years cancer-free, and she sits on the board of directors of our now publicly traded company. Mm-hmm. She and my daughter both graduated from the University of Virginia last May, and she's since taken her MCATs, and her MCATs are really good, and so she will be going to medical school next year.
That's amazing.
But unfortunately, through our journey, and before we started OS Therapies, we started OS Collaborative, oscollaborative.org, to really change the trajectory of osteosarcoma. And Olivia's father and I helped start the nonprofit. We started shaving our heads to raise money for St. Baldrick's. And other than Olivia's dad and me, all the parents involved in all of the nonprofits around osteosarcoma, and it turns out in most childhood diseases, have lost their child to the disease. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a real inspiration for us. And then, with some of the money that we raised for the nonprofit, we brought in KOLs from across the country and really wanted them to start pushing genetic testing, um, because standard of care in osteosarcoma was a good 5 years behind any other cancer. They just had no idea what the genetic makeup of the cancers were. And at that meeting, Dr. Richard Gerlach of MD Anderson put up a slide about the most promising new technologies. And our future technology was up there. I had happened to read about it about a week before the meeting. And so that was the first check that, we were kind of going the right direction. And then the next day, I emailed 8 of these really, really busy, probably the busiest people in the world, right? Because they're treating kids, they're researching, and they're flying around the world trying to make a difference in this really bad disease. And I emailed 8 of them the next morning. I said, we're going to start a company. We're going to in-license that canine osteosarcoma. I used to call it the dog treatment because dogs get osteosarcoma a lot more than humans. I said, we're going to start a company. We're going to license that technology. Will you be on our scientific advisory board? All 8 of them emailed me back that day.
That day.
That day. And that was check number 2. We're going in the right direction. I might not be the brightest, but when these signs are given to me, it's pretty obvious we're going in the right direction. So the next month, I met with the company that was out licensing the technology. They had in-licensed it from the University of Pennsylvania. I met Dr. Robert Pettit across the table. He was as passionate about this technology as I was about the disease. He's now our chief medical and scientific officer. And it's great to have the founding scientists for not only that platform technology, the HER2 technology, but also our ADC technology. We have the founding scientists on our team for that as well. So really vast amount of resources in these founders. And 6 months, 8 months later, we didn't license the technology. About 2 years, on March 15th, 2020, the beginning of COVID, we started our weekly clinical trials call. We still do that every Monday. And then on October 21st, 2021, we put our first kid in the trial. 4 weeks ago, yesterday, the last kid got his last dose. So 41 kids have been in our trial. And we expect to read out on the data the week after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So that's an incredible story. And there are a whole bunch of details in there that I want to dig out a little bit. I mean, you find yourself, like I said, your career to this point has been quite successful. You've made a name for yourself in government and public policy affairs in big bio. A wise and probably well-planned move into consultancy after doing that for 25 years, setting yourself up for a likely a good business, a good probably lifestyle business that's going to serve you well. And then this comes along, this experience comes along, Olivia comes along, and you feel motivated to do something. Tell us tell us about your preparedness to do that thing, or lack thereof, if you don't mind. Like, sharing a little bit about like how before we even get into, well, where's the money going to come from? How am I going to get the experts that I need? How did you reconcile in your mind? All right, I'm going to grab, I'm going to have to grab the shifter and make a shift here. How did you wrap your mind around this? Like, I'm going to go do this. We're going to go do this.
Well, Matt, I've said a couple of times, startups are no country for old men. But it reminds me, Bernie Marcus and Ken Langone didn't start Home Depot till they were 55. And I think it is the experience and the past, the network, the hard knocks, the challenges, the inspiration of great leaders that I've had in the past that prepared me. I certainly wasn't looking for it. When I started my career selling orthopedic implants and then transferring over to the biotech division of J&J, I met a great network of people. And I often say there's only one thing I know about getting old that's good, and that's watching your friends do well.
Mm.
The folks that I worked with at Biotech and Johnson and at Boehringer Ingelheim and Amgen have spread across the entire industry and are running the industry. And so it's those friends and coworkers that we'll look to as we develop our platform technologies to partner with them, because I think we do have a lot to offer with both our platforms to big biotech, big pharma. With the HER2, we really believe that adding our cancer killing uh, vaccine to Herceptin or Trastuzumab, we can increase the effectiveness of Herceptin or Trastuzumab, but we can also prevent patients from getting resistance to that therapy, because Trastuzumab keeps the cancer down. Our vaccine comes in and underneath and kills it. And so, and then on the ADC technology, our special sauces were wrapping the payloads with silicone, and then attaching the payloads, multiple payloads to the ADC with silicone. The beauty of silicone is it doesn't get broken down by the proteins. It gets broken down by pH levels. And it turns out cancer has a higher pH level. All of this came from different experiences through my career, starting with orthopedic implants, seeing patients get Walter Reed Army Medical Center was the global military center for kids of military personnel that had osteosarcoma. Mm-hmm. So we had kids flying in from all over the world, Japan, Germany, Spain, London or England, different places around the world that our military is based. And these kids were getting treated for osteosarcoma at Walter Reed. Dr. Bill Hopkinson, who is now at Loyola, I believe, Dr. Tom Temple, who's down at Florida Atlantic, they are some of the pioneers of limb salvage. So a lot of these kids can keep their limbs when they get osteosarcoma in their long bones. So that was a great experience watching leaders like that. And then being at Johnson & Johnson, they were the ones that inspired me to go back to graduate school and paid for my Master's of Health Policy. It was Amgen that gave me the opportunity to really use that degree. And my biggest goal in the entire industry, Matt, was to someday run a Washington office for the biopharmaceutical industry. And I got the opportunity to run government affairs for Boehringer Ingelheim. And after that, one really dangerous thing I think about being a good leader is not having a goal. And so I'd hit my goal and I didn't know what else there was. Yeah. I had been inspired by great CEOs at Johnson & Johnson and at Boehringer Ingelheim with Marty Carroll and Paul Fontaine. But I never really envisioned doing that. As a friend of mine who worked at NASDAQ said to me, "Did you ever think you'd take a company public?" And I said, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
And so after BI, some former co-workers from J&J and Boehringer Ingelheim and a friend of mine from MedImmune, AstraZeneca, got together and we said we should really look to start a company to take, phase 2, phase 3 assets that aren't big enough for big pharma, big bio, take them off the shelf, reanalyze them with new data analytics, and then see if we can, make a go of products like that. And we had a couple, we were all busy at the time, so it ended up not happening. But when Olivia got sick, I knew what we had to do, because the survival rate, if it came back to her lungs or her brain, if it metastasized, like any other cancer, when it metastasizes, when you drop the survival from pretty good to horrible, right? And they say 13%. And so I knew we had to do something about that. And that's when I read in Pink Sheets that this company was giving up this asset from University of Pennsylvania. And I knew why they were giving it up. It was only 1,000 patients a year.
Yeah.
The incidence rate. And that's when, the idea of taking something off the shelf and getting it through the FDA. And so it was phase 2B ready. We in-licensed it and We now have the rights to that, and we finished the clinical trial, and we'll be submitting to the FDA here in the next few months. And I'm very confident that at least a conditional approval is on the horizon, short horizon for us through the event-free survival data.
Mm-hmm.
But then once they see the overall survival, I think we'll be able to get to full approval. But either way, as you know, the priority review vouchers, that could really help a company like us. And it falls back to my old job, right? Public policy and government affairs, and that the intended consequences of the priority review voucher were to get companies like ours to seek commercialization of products for rare and pediatric diseases.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing. And by giving us a transferable voucher that we can sell to Big Pharma so that they can cut in line by 4 months is just a great win-win. One, we're getting new commercial products out for rare and pediatric diseases. And, Big Pharma cuts in line 4 months. It's kind of like Clear or Global Access. And they get on the market 4 months sooner, which people always think, it's four more months of sales. Yes, it's 4 more months of sales. It's also 4 more months ahead of your competition. But it's also, the biggest thing is 4 more months of growing your forecast. And if you extrapolate that out 2, 3, 5, 7 years, your forecast is even larger because of those extra 4 months on the front end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, all of my worlds and all of my experience and all of the great people that I've worked with in the industry for a long time, and frankly, some of the board leaders that I worked with, you learn from them as well, and you hope you don't repeat their mistakes.